It is time to throw my hat into the proverbial Duel Links' dying ring because we've got a really big topic to discuss today, and it's one that is good on the surface, right? Good in the short term, but in the long term, it's actually proven to be the worst Duel Links has been in its 10-year history, and it's getting worse, and there's no real signs of it getting better. So let's talk about FOMO, fear of missing out. Now, it's a strategy many companies use, right, to drive monetization, to drive revenue, and in Duel Links, it's done in 3 different ways. You first of all got the campaign cards and events, right? Usually they reprint these cards in a timely manner, right? There's not too long to wait between a card being an event and maybe going to a ticket or the event rerunning, etc. Some cards take a while. I'm looking at things like Gallant Granite being needed for Nibiru access, or things like the new Meteor Dragon Snails that was then necessary for the deck a week later, right? That turned out to be the best deck in the Go Rush Festival. Or you look at Blue Eyes White Dragon for Rush Duel back in 2024, is still for some reason not available, which doesn't make any sense given the structure deck in the shop that kind of needs the card to exist in some way. Secondly, is selection box cards in the shop. Now, this is the most kind of divisive one I think for Duel Links players, is the wait time between a card being in a selection box and then being available for free in a normal box. And so we've seen cards go into selection boxes in like 125 days on the short end, all the way through to 300, 400, 564 I believe was Alpha the Master of Beasts, or Armageddon Knight being 657, which is ridiculous. You look at Nibiru being 431, you think Ike Masquerena right now is still at 365 days, just like yesterday, past over that 1 year mark. And so what we're seeing is that on average, selection boxes are getting worse in terms of the amount of time it takes for a card to be reran in a non-free-to-play paywalled box. But I think the bigger thing is characters. Now, we all know Duel Links characters come to the game and they bring the new skills, new cards, and sometimes these cards are relevant for top tier decks, and other times they are relevant to sell a box. Whenever these characters aren't available, the value of their boxes goes down quite a bit. You know, you look at something like, say, the Galaxy Eyes box. When Kite wasn't available, that box was only really good for, say, Malevolent Sin. Or you go to the Phantom Knight box, and that box value dropped way down because Yuto, the required character, wasn't available for new players. This has always been the biggest thorn in Duel Links' side in terms of accessibility for new players, and it's why I think the game can struggle at times. There's been a big shift in the amount of days it takes for a character to rerun. Since the Deal update back in September, we've seen them drastically bring this down from the averages of the prior years being in the 100 days range, 140 days range, down to 61, 75, 51, 62, 53, which of course is really, really promising, but that doesn't tell the whole story. All that does is makes boxes a bit more valuable in the short term, but in the long term, things are way worse than they've ever been. So if we go back to the Zexal World year, on average it took around 186 days to go to the gate, which, you know, okay, back then was fine, it's quite high. Then the next year, for the Arc 5 World, it took 150 days on average to go to the gate. An improvement, that's good. The year after, for Vrain's World, 138. Again, an improvement, we like to see it. The next year, 7's World, the same 138 point average. Okay, we've stayed the same, we found a good baseline. That's really good. Now for Go Rush's release year, which is still ongoing, with characters still not at the gate. We're currently an average of 203 days to go from first unlock to the gate. That isn't telling the whole story still, because prior to this, the longest time it took for a character to go to the gate was back in 2021, where Duke, Antinomy, and Kite all took between 205 and 209 days to go to the gate, which was the longest one by far. Since then, we've never seen remotely close to that. You know, the highest we've seen is 170 days. Yeah, and that was again, early on in 2022. Since then, it's been in the 150 days range, even less than that. But go to last year, we saw the following figures, right? Yuri, 189 days. Zuijo, 195 days. Soulborn and Flame, 194. Maddox, 209. Akira Zaizen, 219. Vector, 266. And now waiting for Yuka. And so if Yuka comes to the gate on the 30th of March, the earliest time possible, that's 278 days. But if they decide to hold it back to the 20th of April alongside a rush box after KC Cartwright, that's 300 days to go to the gate, which is 10 months worth of waiting. That means that that box Yuka came alongside, which was Flash the Shining Flare, has lost a good chunk of value for so long. And it affects Rush Duel more than Speed Duel, because if you look at Speed Duel, right, most of the characters now are older characters, they're getting, skills via the card trader, and so it's really only maybe Vrain's getting more characters that might actually have a big impact in terms of meta-locking cards behind a character. You know, things like Marincess or Ignistas or Appliances, for example. Those, like the big 3 anime decks we've kind of got left of Vrain's World to come to the game, those would be a bit of an issue. Long-term product value is now worse for Rush Duel in a big way. For Speed Duel, kind of, but not really. If you look at Speed Duel, right, you've got Noah as one of the big outliers, right, who had a really free-to-play deck and would have been the go-to free-to-play new player character to recommend, but if they're only available for, 20 days total in the span of 7 to 9 months at this point, is that really good recommendation, especially when they've now been hit on the ban list? And so if there was any investment needed there, that would have sucked. You look at Marek. Marek had some really integral cards in his level up rewards for the RAR deck, and they gave that skill to the old Marek as well. So as a new player, for the last God knows how many months, you've been able to go to the game, get Marek, get the skill, go and buy into the box, and then go, I can't actually play the deck because I'm missing so many key cards for the deck to work. That's not good on Konami's part, not good on the player's part. That sucks. And we now look to Marin and Nash, right? Nash is doing okay-ish as a rogue strategy, right? But Marin, she's got Dagaris and level up rewards. If that card becomes necessary in, the next 6 months, then you might be screwed out because by all projections, she won't come until, August or September as a gate unlock. And it's worse for Rush Duel, right? Because Rush is so focused around the characters being integral parts of the boxes, right? You go for Yuka, for example, you look at her box, and so you've got hero support, her support, of course, and then some Royable support and a bit of Blue Fang support, so the box value is still there, but still a big chunk of it, right, in the Yuka support is now off limits. If you go to Tiger, for example, the only real deck in that box that did anything is Music Princess, and so the value of that box has just kind of been slaughtered because you haven't been able to obtain her since October as a rerun, and she was one of the best decks in the most recent Go Rush Cup, and in the one before that. And so you've been locked out of playing one of the best decks in the format if you want a new player. And so this issue with Duel Links taking so long to rerun characters now is them kind of forcing diversity into the metagame, right? And we've now just seen them hit on the ban list. So if you did invest in the chance that she'll come to the game time soon, then you've kind of been screwed out. We also then go and look at Emi. She's not been rerun since January, so it's not as bad, but her box overall is way better, right? You've got Gradius in here, Neos in here, Blue Fang support. All of those are still, very viable and very good. So her box is actually kind of safe, but I think the Music Princess one was actually a really, really bit of an issue. And it's interesting that Hero, despite being so dominant in the Rush Duel metagame, right, being a very big OTK strategy, being able to go Pot of Greed, circulation, they weren't hit on the ban list. And I think the reason why is because for some older boxes, like Flash of Shining Flare, it's the only reason right now to buy into that product. It's the only reason that product is selling. It's because of the hero cards. And so they don't want to cut off that product entirely. And so we've now got 7 characters on demand for a rerun, which is the most we've ever had. And judging by them going off the same pattern still of 1 character-ish per month, we're probably not going to leave this 9 to 10 month gap between Event 1 and Gate Unlock anytime soon. As an example, right, let's go and take Vector, right? Vector was available in May of 2025 and unlocked the gate in February 2026. That was a very long time. If you go back to the main character for last year, right, which was Spectre in May 2024, he was unlockable in October, which is a massive difference. Go back to 2023. Yugo was available in the October. Back to 2022. We had no character then, so let's go and take Sora from April, was available in the October. We'll go back again to our main character Primo, was available in the November. So there is some slight adjustment there, but it's never been this bad. And there's no real sign of it improving. Could this be a teething issue, right? Where we could have a bit of a bulk of characters, right, in the 280 character day range, right, to get rerun, and then suddenly come way back down? Sure, it could do. But there's been a very noticeable increase in the last year, and it's been trending upward. It's not been faltering, it's just been trending upwards, and if that trend continues, I worry for the future of Duel Links overall, especially in terms of accessibility. Now, hopefully this video changes something, but hopefully, maybe Konami just forgot, but hopefully this at least brings more awareness to the fact that we are in the worst spot Duel Links ever been in terms of characters, and it is something that does need fixing, and it's just one of those things that could be looked at and could be read into as being a really, really bad thing and a really bad sign of Duel Links' longevity going forward, or it could be a long-term play to actually reprint cards when the gate unlocks come, right? You look at, say, Yuka, for example, Rush Duel. There could be a deck box with the Utopia stuff in, some generic warrior support, and then another brand new theme, right? That could be something that happens. Or you get to Tiger, and she could come to the gate back in, I don't know, June or something, and then we get more Music Prince support, and that would kind of offset the balance hits. maybe that's their thinking. Maybe the rush stuff is making everything else take longer. I don't know. I don't want to pin a blame or anything, but we don't know. Yeah, we just don't know. Just at the moment, we're in the worst spot possible, and it doesn't look like it's going to get better, but hopefully it does. Hopefully it does. Anyway, that's my rambly video for today. Tomorrow, hopefully, should be coming updates. We'll talk about the balance there as well, because I think it's going to be a bit of a light month, right? Given we've got Casey Cup, we know we're getting a DM character for the first half of the month, so we'll see what happens. And of course, there's a new character deck to talk about as well, which could be exciting depending on how they work. So we'll hopefully find out more. Anyway, thanks for watching. Adios.